Hmm. I was thinking today on the about the word chunk, and I don't really have much to say about it, other than I was just thinking, what makes something a chunk versus something being a hunk? You know, like you would go to the store and you would buy a hunk of beef. If you bought a chunk of beef, that just seems wrong. But when you've been a bad boy, you get a chunk of coal in your stocking at Christmas. So what makes something a chunk and what makes something a hunk? That's what I want to know. And I would hope that somebody is watching and can enlighten me. Because I don't want to look up what it means in the dictionary. Dictionaries are gay and retarded now. I want to know what the average man has to say about chunk versus hunk versus, I don't know, maybe there's some other word. I don't know. But that's what I was thinking about today. And that's also all I really have to say about chunk. It's a terrible theme. I can't talk about it for an hour. I mostly just want to do my laundry. Although it does make me think about other words. Like, it's like, is there a difference between a strip of bacon and a slice of bacon? You know? I feel like there is, but I'm trying to wrap my head around why I feel differently about them. To me, it's always bacon strips, not slices. So a slice of bacon seems wrong, but they also, in my mind, are the same thing. Just one has a worse feeling to it. A slab of bacon, I would say, is thicker. That would be like where a slab of bacon, I don't know, because a slab of bacon would just be pork belly. That's a different cut. And then you slice a strip off of it. Jesus Christ. Or is a slab of bacon a package of bacon? Like a whole slab's worth. But it's sliced into strips. Jesus, it just never ends once you start thinking about things. And I don't know, a hunk being larger than a chunk? You think so? Is it a size thing? Or is it like, does hunk work because it is a living thing? And then chunk works because coal is just some inanimate, who gives a shit object, you know? But you, no, because you eat chunks of chocolate. So chunks are smaller. I could see that. I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm trying to understand my language. And I probably should stop doing that. Because it's a mutt language anyways. It's all over the place. Hmm. You can take a chunk out of a hunk, but not a hunk out of a chunk. Intuitively, that sounds right. That does sound right. But where's the cutoff, I guess? How big does something have to be before it's a hunk? To me, a hunk of beef is like a roast, you know? I guess a roast. Even maybe this big. Beyond, if it's under than that, it's not a hunk anymore. And it's just a cut of beef. But at the same time, if I was at like a holiday meal and there was a ham and they cut out a, a big portion of it and put it on my plate, I would say, ooh, that's a big old hunk of ham. I wouldn't say it was a chunk, even though it's smaller than a hunk of beef. Hmm. I feel like chunk is a more. It seems like a more volatile, almost aggressive word with that sharp chunk. It's got chunk, whereas hunk seems softer. I'm not sure how that's playing into how I think about things. But intuitively, I think I like hunk for a big, cozy thing, and chunk for something more abrasive. Hmm. A chunk feels smaller. You see, take chunks out of things. Yeah, so it's like concave, so it's like digging out. And a hunk feels like it protrudes, like it's sticking out from a larger hole. Hmm. I don't know, man. Definitely, I feel like chunks come out of other things. Like something on its own, it's definitely not a chunk. It's a hunk. I might have to change how I speak here pretty soon about a hunk of ham might actually be a chunk of ham. I might have to change how I look at things, how I speak and use my words, because words matter. Words can be violence. I have to be careful. What if I said the wrong one? A very strong chunk. When I should have said hunk, and it was emotionally damaging to somebody. I had to go to prison. That would be bad. That's why language is important. Also, reminds me of other words. Like there's the whole ant thing, or crayfish, crawfish, crawdad. I think when I speak about them in the plural, I say crayfish. But if I'm talking about one, I say crawdad. I don't know why, but that's how I say it. Same thing with aunt and aunt. If I'm just talking about somebody's aunt, the general idea is aunt. But if I'm talking about my Aunt Patty, it's aunt. I don't know why. It just seems right. Language is interesting. I found it very interesting during the last national election cycle, where they'd be like, "Oh, Trump's speaking at a fourth grade level or whatever." That means he dumb. That just means more people can understand what he's saying. I don't know why that's like speaking at a easy to understand level. I don't think is a detriment, especially for a leader of a country. When making speeches, I feel like in a cabinet meeting, you're like, you know, saying dumb shit. I get it. That's bad. I wonder what grade level Biden speaks at. You'd have to get out a complete sequence of words for us to actually analyze it. But I don't want to get political. I just want to talk about chunk. Chunk is a good word. I like it. There was that candy, Chunky. Always saw that at the store. Never bought it. Didn't want it. But I thought it had a good name. It looked chunky. It looked like a little chunk. It fit. I like to use the word clothing instead of clothes. For some reason, that seems odd to some people. Like it sticks out when I say something about my clothing. I don't know. Seems like a better word to me. Clothes feels brash. Clothing kind of has a humanity to it. There's something about it. What can I say? I'm a human. So I like it. I've got a bad topic for the night. What can you really say about Chunk? Not much. Something needs to come along and make Chunk more more of a thing. I think it's a good word. Instead of break me off a piece, people should be saying, give me a chunk of that. I think you're right. I think chunk is broken off from a larger piece. So, would it be a whole side of beef is a hunk? And then all the cuts taken from it are chunks? And then there are sub chunks? God damn. I don't know. I still like the sound of hunk of beef more than I like the idea of a chunk of beef. Beef seems too noble to be a chunk. Chunk seems kind of crude. That's for pork. Beef? That's a hunk. Or a cut. That's what I think. Yeah, I probably should not be talking about meat when it comes to generic hunks and chunks, because they get pretty specific on cuts and roasts and things like that. That's, yes, a roast beef seems like a hunk to me, but it is a chunk of a whole cow. So why does that seem like a hunk instead of a chunk? Or would it be different if I was more in tune with the animal itself? I only ever see the meat at the grocery store. So the largest piece of beef would seem like a hunk. But if I saw a whole side of a cow, or a whole cow or whatever, that would be a hunk of beef. And then everything from it would be chunks. Well, cuts. I'd probably say cuts. If I had a loaf of French bread and I broke off part of it, I call that a hunk of bread, not a chunk. But I would also call a smaller loaf baked into the size of that other hunk a hunk. The whole loaf is a loaf, not a hunk of bread. The part broken off is the hunk. So why is the bread a hunk? Why would I call a hunk of bread a hunk of bread instead of a chunk of bread? Is it because of the softer nature of bread, where chunk is too strong and sharp and jagged of a word for something soft like a hunk of bread? Is it like other languages where they have gendered roles for, like, oh, a pen is, I don't remember if a pen is masculine or feminine in French or whatever, but they have gendered roles to them based off of their traits. Is that what hunk and chunk is? Is I've accidentally gendered the words, like in other languages? That seems like it could be something to work off of for an idea. Hmm. Hard to say. Yeah, I feel like hearty, like maybe hunk is the more masculine form. But I don't think it's even a gendered thing, because I wouldn't say that chunk is feminine. Hmm. Hmm. Let's see, what are some other things that have hunks and chunks that we can analyze and try to get to the bottom of this so I can know what the hell a chunk is. I guess we can look at things like chunky peanut butter. That's just not smooth. Like, I wouldn't even call most chunky peanut butter chunky. It's just got little bits in it. But it is more, I would say, abrasive. I do feel like chunk is what makes it a chunk is its abrasiveness. The attribute. Because there's not like jagged bread. Maybe that's why I don't think of bread as being a chunk, and I see it as a hunk. It's generally more smooth, more light, more rounded, soft. A chunk of chocolate. Broke it. Yeah, I've never heard of anyone describe peanut butter or vomit or soup or anything like that as hunky. Chunky. It's always chunky. I'm trying to think of if there's any other words used to describe it, but I think it's basically always chunky. And then things can be gritty, but those are little tiny bits. Like the difference between gritty peanut butter and chunky peanut butter is just some little bits inside. They're a little bit different in size. Hmm. I feel like I'm starting to narrow in a little bit what I think of chunk versus hunk. But I also feel like I'm finding more and more exceptions where it's not a steadfast rule. It's ruled by emotions and what feels right, which I don't like that. I want to understand, be able to describe my opinion. Tell people, no, you goddamn idiot, this is a chunk, and here's why. But it's hard to tell. I don't know. I need to figure it out. I spent a lot of time making cover art for this thing with the word chunk over and over and over. And you know what? I don't think those words are chunky anymore. They're too thin. The water bleed softens it. These aren't chunky. They don't represent chunk. But what do they represent? What word would these be? What word would these be? Not chunk. These aren't chunk. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Soup being hearty and chunky. That's true. I feel like hearty has to do with the nature of the ingredients, and not like the physical aspect of them. You know, like a hearty, I don't know. It'd be thick, rich. But I also can't think of a hearty soup which isn't chunky. Like if a soup was just like thick and had nothing in it, it'd just be like a gravy. Hmm. Oh dear. Just running into more and more problems. Trying to figure out the chunk. I think these aren't chunk. I think these are more in tune with spunk. These seem like spunk words, not chunk words. Too thin, wispy. I feel like a hunk has to be a solid. A pot of soup can't be a hunk. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. Hunk seems like a solid thing. Especially chunk seems solid. Hunk can be soft, but chunk needs to be, I don't know, jagged and rough. Something small. I can't. I don't know. There's something about it. There's something about it. Although if soup was frozen, then it would be a chunk. If you had a frozen chunk of soup and you thawed it, it would no longer be a chunk. It would just be soup. Even though it's the same thing, it just changed its form a little bit through temperature. Huh. And it would be a hunk of, no, it would be a chunk of soup. A hunk of soup doesn't seem right. It'd be a chunk of soup frozen into a block, and then you would thaw it, heat it up, and you would eat it with a hunk of bread with a pat of butter. The shit is a pat. Is there anything else which is a pat, or is it just butter? Why the hell is it a pat of butter? Wouldn't it be a slice of butter? Or even, it could be a chunk, but it's too uniform and structured to be that, I think. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if soup can ever be hunky. I know if you can do, if you get the bones and get all the collagen and whatnot, you can get thickened. But I still wouldn't call it hunky. What I would call it, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Hmm. I mean, I would probably just call it thick or goop. Some goop soup. I like the word goop. But let's say you go really far with the gelatin, collagen, whatever. Let's say you've got Jello, Jello dessert. Uh, oops, just press the button on my keyboard, which means I should probably put these away. Let me get these out of the way. I guess I would describe gelatin desserts as chunky. So if there was a soup that got to that point, would I call that chunky too? Maybe. But it's too rich and bold. Ah, god damn it. Husky. I've only ever really known husky to be like a thick person. You know, like a fat teenage boy whose mom doesn't want to hurt his feelings by saying he's fat. So they go to the husky section and get clothing there. That's where they go to get the button up shirts with flames on them for the husky kid. I don't know why husky got to mean that. You look at husky dogs. They're not fat pieces of shit. Yeah, why did husky get to mean some thick, borderline fat, sad piece of shit 13-year-old boy who likes to wear button up shirts, bowling shirts, with flames and dice on them? Why is that husky? Certainly not. It's not modeled after the husky dog. And no one would look at a husk of corn and go, yep, if that was a human being, if that was the descriptor for a human being, it'd be somebody who watches Monster Garage. That doesn't make any sense. Where the hell did that whole husky thing come from? Oh boy. Every once in a while I think about the common usage of words and slang and I just get confused. I shouldn't do that. I often come up with my own slang just in the moment based off of what feels right in a conversation. I'll just come up with a new phrase and whoever I'm talking to intuitively knows what I'm trying to say. And then I'd never use the phrase again. Because communication is all about being understood, right? And I guess if people understand what you mean by chunk versus hunk, no one's going to be confused. So does it really matter if we're all hunks here? Yes, Edwin L. Drake, we're hunking out. We're trying to get down to the bottom of it. Why we're hunks and not chunks? And we are hunks. Calling a tattoo stabby art sounds incredibly juvenile. It's like the sports ball shit. Yeah, I don't watch sports ball. Stabby art. That's like, a semi permanent sort of thing. I would hope people would take it more seriously, like they did in the past, where it was only like family crests and like important shit, and not their vaccination date or Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin pissing on Susie's head and calling her a bitch or something. Like, I feel like tattoos should have more significance, be taken more seriously. Not so casual, but I'm pretty old fashioned. I'm basically an old man in a not even a young man's body anymore, just a man's body. I'm a man. Do they still use the word husky for thick dudes when they sell clothing? Or do they have a different name now? Because for some reason that's no longer in vogue or something. You know, kind of like going from colored people to people of color, where it doesn't really seem any different, but apparently it's a world of difference. Where like you can't call chicks plump anymore. They're thick. Some shit like that. Plus size queen. Maybe big dudes are now referred to as California kings or something. Oh man. Girthy? I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. I can't see going to the Nordstrom rack and seeing something labeled as girthy. You know what? Yeah, that husky clothing always did seem to be more loose for draping over the fat ass frame and hiding it as best it could be hidden. Hmm. I guess now they probably just say big and tall, huh? Although most of them aren't even tall, they're just big. Big fat lards. Oh, speaking of clothing, I've got some new sleeping shorts. My old pants were finally wearing through enough. I've got some new ones, and I can sleep in these instead of my old pair of sleeping shorts, which have been destroyed by girth. These are my old sleeping shorts from my last pair of pants. And this tear right here is where my cock goes. The girth of my cock wore through the pants while I was sleeping. Over months and months. So I can't wear these anymore. I had to get some new sleeping shorts because my girth destroyed these ones. You know what they should do? On dress shirts, first of all, when people tuck them in and they get all bunched up as they come up and they look like shit, that's no good. You gotta have like sock garters for that. But instead of that, what if they made a dress shirt and it had a pouch pocket thing at the front So when you tuck it in, you put your cock and balls in there, and it kept your shirt tucked in the front, looking good. We already have them. Let's use them. Let's use our big cock and balls for keeping our shirt in and looking good. That's what I think. I should patent that shit. Make $1 billion. Now that would be a girthy shirt. Congealed sounds too scientific, too formal for just describing. I mean, that's absolutely what it is. But I don't know. If you're just talking to like somebody who didn't know the word congealed, how would you describe it? Goop. Although I still think Jello is chunky. Chunky goop. Hmm. I mean, if it's cut into little chunks. Like if you go to a hometown buffet and they've got the pan of the Jello cut into the chunks. That's chunk. But goop, I don't know. Goop is more liquid. Jello being fully congealed like that, that's not goop. That's something else. On the topic of Jello, I really don't like the texture of gelatin. Like as a dessert, it seems off, seems wrong to me. I don't like it. Like I'll open up a can of Spam and I'll see the gelatin go, ooh, I gotta make sure that's going into whatever I'm eating. That's flavor. But like a gelatin dessert, it doesn't seem right. There's something about it. Texture is a big thing for me, and that's just one of them. I don't like it. Same thing with beans for some reason. Refried beans or even just cooked beans. There's something about it. There's just like a certain texture feel to it, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, I'm not gonna if I get something that's got beans in it. Like who gives a shit? I'll eat it, but it will be detrimental to the overall texture of the whole thing. And I'll think about it. Oh yeah, those old Jello desserts are insane. They're putting all sorts of shit in them, like meat and fruit, and topping it with like Cool Whip, which was also probably new at the time. It's an abomination before man and God. Yeah, abomination is a really good word for those. Yeah. I feel like I'm not going to figure out my opinion on chunk versus hunk by the end of this. I think it's just one of those things where you just have to feel it. I'm not going to overanalyze it and force myself to change my language. I thought it would be a good idea to figure it out. I like understanding things, but the more I think about it, the more I think it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to try to figure it out. It's like going into conspiracy theories and whatnot, an endless rabbit hole. I like pudding. I do like pudding. Pudding's more silky. I mean, I guess it also depends on what type of pudding. Because, like, bread pudding is very different from, like, a pudding you make with, a thickener, like cornstarch or something, and heat it up. Yeah, I think that's what I was getting to earlier at the beginning is chunks do seem smaller. Hunks seem larger and softer. Chunks seem smaller, possibly taken from a larger thing, and are more jagged. They have a jagged, sharp sound to them. Yeah, lumpy. Jesus, yeah, I can't think of anything which is where lumpy is not like a negative. If something's described as lumpy, it's usually a bad thing. I wonder why. It doesn't sound like it's a violent word or negative word from the get go. But yeah, like a lumpy gravy, no good. Hmm. I've only got one of these socks. I lost a sock somewhere. And then this one doesn't match too. I've got two mismatched socks. Jesus Christ. There's probably a pair of socks somewhere where I accidentally put the wrong type together in a drunken fit of, you know, trying to do laundry. Foolish of me. Yeah, I don't know if I would call tortilla chips lumpy. Ah, I don't know. That's a. Hmm. They can be crisp, airy, puffy. I'd say they're like, I'd say puffy more than lumpy. Lumpy, I feel, is like solid chunks of something in something else. Tortilla chips, if they have a lumpy surface texture, it's because they're puffy. Hard to say though. Who knows? Language is, language is retarded. It's never going to make sense. Maybe I should just study the Italian language, because like the only thing I've ever really figured out is that Italians are always wrong. So maybe I should study the works of the enemy and figure out what they think is proper, and then the opposite is my opinion. That sounds like a lot of work, though. Well, all my laundry is folded, so I guess I'll just hang around until I'm done with my drink, and then end the stream, do my trash and recycling, and go to bed. Although I probably won't, because I just drank caffeine. So it might be night walk time. But yeah, I think lumpy definitely is like a solid, dense piece of shit in something that you don't want it to be in. It's like an implied negative, like it's not supposed to be there. That's what I think. Like lumpy pancake batter, you don't want it. Clumpy. Clump sounds like a hunk of dry stuff in a batter, which could also be the lumpy batter. Yeah, shit, god damn it, clumpy. Clumpy sounds more dry to me. Lump sounds solid, clump sounds dry, and like able to fall apart, like horse shit. It's just clumps of digested grass. Something more solid would be a hunk or a chunk, depending on its. Yeah. Clump to me is more loose. Not necessarily dry, but more ready to fall apart, I would say. Hmm. Yeah, like a clump of dirt, yeah. Just something that is it's gonna fall apart more readily. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, because a lump of dirt sounds different too. A lump sounds like it's on something, attached to something. Oh, is twink the opposite of hunk? I haven't looked it up on the Bing.com. Probably. Sounds feminine, like twinkly lights. Ugh. Hmm. Man, words, my dudes. Makes me think too, like if you have something like a Salisbury steak or a meatloaf, is that a hunk or a chunk or is that something else? Because that's not one solid thing. If it's made out of ground beef, I, it doesn't seem like a chunk. You know, it doesn't seem like a hunk either. It's just a loaf, and when you cut it, it's either a slice of meatloaf or a slab, depending on how thick and hearty it is. Oh god, this shit just never ends, man. People make fun of Americans for only knowing one language, but our language is complex as shit. It takes a lifetime to master this. That was too much. Okay, let's see. Yeah, this is good. Okay. Let's touch. I got too thick. Okay. Take that off. Okay. I need something to brace this. Use my dental floss. Do it above. Okay. All right. Laundry's done. I still have no idea what the chunk hunk shit going on is. I've given up. I'm gonna end the stream. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for trying to educate me. I was too dumb to figure it out. I don't think we'll ever figure out the chunk hunk lump. Husky, any of those words that we debated. I don't think we'll ever know. I think it's emotional. So, sorry, but I need to go.